Hey, fourth graders. Today we're going to be learning how to measure an angle using a protractor. But before we get to the protractor, I want to talk about some types of angles with their measurement here. First one is a repeat from yesterday. We have a right angle. Remember, we can fit like a square corner with a right angle here. Well, a right angle is 90 degrees, right? If I go from point C all the way to point A and I measure that with my protractor, I would get 90 degrees. It's good to know that a right angle equals 90 degrees. And again, the way that I write that is I would write 90 with my little degree sign right up in the top corner there. After a right angle is a straight angle. Now, a straight angle is kind of two right angles combined. If I start at point G and I measure my angle all the way over to point E, although it doesn't kind of look like it, although it doesn't look like it, there are two rays here, so this is still an angle connected here with a vertex. If I were to measure my straight angle here, I would get 180 degrees. Straight angles are 180, right angles are 90. Last but certainly not least, I don't know if you've ever watched like a slam dunk contest, but sometimes they do a 360 dunk. Now, a 360 dunk is where they jump all the way around in a complete circle and then they slam it home. Well, the reason why it's called a 360 dunk is because a 360 is like basically a circle. 360 degrees is a circle. If I start right here at my point and I go all the way around and I measure all the way around and finish back at that same point, that is 360 degrees. Hey, fourth graders. So in a second here, I'm going to actually have you guys go to this link and you guys are going to do some practicing, measuring some angles. The link is from Math Playground here. And once you get to this main page, what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you scroll down. I'm going to have you click that green arrow. I like to zoom in so I can see it a little bit better here. But what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be measuring angles with a protractor. Now, there's two things you need to keep in mind when you're measuring an angle with a protractor. The first thing is you need to make sure that your protractor, the middle of it, this line right here, that white line, the middle part of your protractor is lined up with the vertex of the two rays that make up the angle. Now, again, remember my ray starts here and goes out and keeps going because it's forever like a sun ray, and same with this ray, but they both meet up at this point here, my vertex. And that's where the middle of my protractor needs to be. The other thing that you need to do is you need to make sure that one of your rays lines up with the bottom of your protractor here. Now again, for that previous one with the vertex, when you use this site here, it's always going to be lined up at the middle of the vertex. But what you really need to make sure you do is you have your red line up with, as best as you can, with one of the rays. Now, again, I picked this ray right here, and I got it as close as I could get it. You need to make sure that you are very precise on that, because if you're not lined up as close as you can get it, then your degree is going to be just a little bit off. Now, once I have it lined up, then I can start to measure my angle. Now, you'll notice here on my protractor, I have numbers 0 to 180. That's my bottom row there. And I also have a top row starting on this side now, going from 0 to 180, right? Because kind of my protractor here goes in the straight line, a 180 degree straight angle there, just like we just talked about. So the next thing that you need to keep in mind when you're measuring is you need to figure out which one of these two rows you're going to use when you measure an angle. Now, I'm already just looking at this angle here, and I can see that it's bigger than 90 degrees, right? Here's my 90 degrees. It's bigger than 90 degrees, so it's going to be an obtuse angle. So if I get a small number, I know it's probably the wrong number. I want to pick the bigger number here. But I can either look at it like that, I already know it's an obtuse, or well, the nice thing is you can always just start with whichever row has the 0 on the ray that you lined up your protractor with. So in this case, I'm going to pick the bottom row because that's where my 0 is. I'm going to go all the way up. I'm measuring from one ray to the other ray here. And I pass my 90 degrees, and I see that I have it between 120 and 130. It's also between 50 and 60. But again, like I said, 55-ish degrees is definitely too small for this big of an angle. Since I definitely know it's an obtuse angle. So again, I'm between 120 and 135. Now, if you look over here at these little dash marks here, between this 60 and 70 here, just for an example, There are 10 marks between my 60 and 70. This middle mark here is the halfway point, so that would be about 65. Anywhere between that, like right here, would be about 62 degrees. Or it could also be 118 degrees. Because if I'm at 110, trying to get to 120, this mark would be 115, halfway between 110 and 120. And then just 3 more marks over would be 118. But we are between 120 and 130. I know it's going to be about, I think, 125 degrees because I can't even see that middle mark there. So that means my yellow line is covering it up. So I'm going to go over here to my calculator type looking thing and type in 125. I'm going to hit my green button. If you accidentally mess up, you can hit the clear button here, but I'm going to hit my green button. Let's see how I do. Zoom out here. So the actual angle was 125 degrees. And what I put in was 125, which means I was exactly correct. 1 for 1. Let's move on to the next one. Let's just do another one here. There are 10 total here that I will ask that you do, but you and I are just going to do 2 of them together here. Okay. What I want to do now is I chose the right-ish ray to line my protractor up with. This is already almost lined up on this side here, so I'm going to pick this one here again, lining it up with one of my rays there. I noticed that my rays here, it's really big, so it looks like an obtuse angle. So I already know it's going to be bigger than 90 degrees. But again, I want to pick the row that I start with the 0. I don't want to start with 180 and go down. I want to start with my 0 here and count up. So I'm going from one ray all the way to my other ray. Now I notice here I'm between 130 and 140, but I'm also here between 40 and 50. I know that about 48 degrees is too small, so I want to be between 130 and 140. And if I'm looking correctly, I can see the 131 mark, but I can't see the 132 mark. So I think that this is 132 degrees. But guys, we can't be perfect all the time. So I'm gonna say for the record that this is a 132 degree angle, but I'm gonna type in 131 because with this site here, you actually can be 1 degree off and it will still count it as correct. Okay, so let's just see that here a second. So again, for the record, I think it's 132 degrees, but I typed in 131. Let's see what they say. Yep, so my actual angle here was 132, just like I said. But what I typed in was 131. So I was 1 degree off. Well, look at that. I was still 2 for 2. So there are 10. And I'm going to ask that you guys go on and work on those 10 and let me know how you do. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a chance to respond and say, hey, I got 10 out of 10, or I got 6 out of 10. Again, remember, line your vertex up. Line the bottom of your protractor up with one of your one of your rays, and then you also want to start. You want to pick the row that you start with the 0. You don't want to start with 180. You want to start with the 0. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all that I have for you for math today. So as always, wash your hands.